In this video, we're going to be discussing not one, not two, but 3 combinations for when you're playing fixed. And we're going to be trying to utilize this to just one single list. So one single list will be able to do all 3 of these combinations when using fixed missions from the Pariah Nexus deck. So make sure you are subscribed down below not to miss out on that video that comes up. We'll be doing the list build for that, or maybe even a couple of lists. It depends on how far I get. But in this video today, we're going to be talking about the pairings. Before we get into the pairings and the fixed missions, I just want to talk about why I believe fixed missions or fixed secondaries are better to play than tactical missions. Now this just may be a personal choice. Tactical missions is probably a lot more fun. It's a lot more random. But I think with fixed missions, you've got a lot more control pre-game. When you're doing your list building, you've got a lot more control. You can have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and so on of how you're actually going to score. So you don't necessarily need a balanced list because you're just purely fixated on the secondaries and holding on to primary objectives. So you already know what you need to do, roughly, depending on the actual mission, of course. When you're playing tactical, you kind of need a little bit of everything at all times. If you go pull in a certain secondary mission, such as bring it down, you've got to have some heavy artillery to be able to take something out, or something good in melee, of course. Or if you do pull behind enemy lines, of course, you've got to have units that can do it alongside everything else that you could potentially pull with the secondary deck. So that's why I prefer to use fixed as opposed to tactical. Now, like I said already in the intro, what I want to do is I want to create a list later on where I can deal with multiple different combinations. It all depends on your opponent's faction, your opponent's playstyle, and their deployment as well, and the units, of course. So we're going to have 3 different options here: option A, option B, option C. And as soon as you've seen your opponent's list, because of course you're going to declare lists with one another before choosing if you're playing fixed and whatnot. Once you've seen their list, you can kind of work out which combo is going to work best and in your favor. So in the deck, there are 9 fixed missions with this new chapter approved deck. They are Assassination, Behind Enemy Lines, Bring It Down, Cleanse, Cull the Horde, Engage in all fronts, Establish Locus, recover assets, and Storm hostile objective. Now we've already done in a previous video, we've gone through all the secondaries, not just the fixed, all of them, and how best to score them. So if you've not checked that one out, go back and find it, and yeah, have a look just to give you some ideas and ways of actually scoring those objectives. But from those 9 that we've just mentioned now, you can select 2 of them pre-game. Now, I'm going to instantly eliminate from this video Assassination, Bring It Down, and even Cull the Horde, because that's very player dependent. It's not something you can cater for. If your opponent doesn't bring barely any characters and you've already planned for Assassination, then you've just killed your game already. So those secondaries we kind of can't cater for when pre-planning. Of course, if it does come up and your opponent's got 9 characters and you want to go for it, by all means, go for it, but you've not optimized your list to do so. So just bear that in mind when you're making that decision. Right, let's get on to the first one then. The first combination is a little bit of a favorite from the previous deck, the Leviathan deck, although they've changed the name of one of them. It's Behind Enemy Lines, and it's going to be going with Establish Locus. Now, Establish Locus is virtually Deploy Teleport Homers, but the new name, if you like. This is the most aggressive out of the 3 that I've got for you today. So this is option A, if you like. So the reason why it's the most aggressive out of the 3 is because it's going to require you to get into your opponent's enemy backlines in order to score the maximum points. You can do Establish Locus in the center. You're only getting 2 points per action there. So even if you did it every single turn, that's only going to score you 10 victory points for that 1 secondary counter. It's not the most ideal. You might be satisfied with that, but there are better options which we'll talk about later on in this video. So when you would select this combination is when your opponent's got quite an aggressive list. Maybe it's against some orcs that are really aggressive. They're going to come out. Chaos Demons are another one. World Eaters are another one. They're going to come out and leave their backlines fairly open. Not completely open. No one really does that. Some people do, in fact. But there's going to be a lot of space for you to get in. Now, the reason why this combination in particular is good because the one unit that's going to be doing the action for established locus is also going to count towards being behind enemy lines if you're doing it in the enemy deployment zone. So one single hex mark destroyer, for example, can teleport in with deep strike behind enemy lines, do the action in the shooting phase, get it done at the end of your turn, and if you've got 3 victory points on his own for behind enemy lines and then another 4 for established locus, that's 7 on his own. If you've got another unit in there, you're going to get an extra point for behind enemy lines as well. So potentially you can get 8 from just 2 units. I mean, the Necron Codex in particular is very good nowadays at getting to where we want to go. I've just mentioned the Hexmark Destroyer. We've got a lot of deep strike units. We've got the Trial Praetorians, the Ophidian Destroyers. Death Marks are really cheap now at 60 points. Lots of cheap methods. We've got the Hypercrypt Legion, which is my favourite detachment, as you guys know. You can literally pop into Street Reserves and then pop out. You will be on a table edge unless you've got Deep Strike, but you've got the enhancement to give Deep Strike if you wished on a character. You've got the Cosmic Precision Stratagem, so you don't even need Deep Strike there. So you can put in a single lone, Illuminus Ares or something, who's also got lone operative, which is going to be quite useful for maybe surviving a turn or two. So it means you'll need less units overall. But yeah, that is the first option I'm going to go with. Behind enemy lines and established locus. I think that probably was my play for the Leviathan deck when I started playing fixed. But sometimes the back lines aren't open. So that's where we're going to come into option B, which is Cleanse and Storm Hostile Objective. Now, these two in particular are not that easy. Cleanse in particular has got a much harder because the pistols aren't going to be doing actions within engagement range anymore. In fact, the vehicles and monsters aren't either. Canoptic Scarabs aren't doing actions unless they've got a Technomancer or a Cryptek or a Command Barge nearby. So we've lost a lot of units that can actually do actions, especially in the No Man's Land. Storm Hostile Objective requires your opponent to have a unit on a No Man's Land objective or their own deployment zone, I guess. But now we're looking at the No Man's Land. If we were able to go into the opponent's deployment zone, we would just take behind enemy lines and establish Locust. So the whole point of going towards Cleanse and Storm Hostile Objective is because they're not really leaving their back lines. It's a little bit more of a castle. Maybe it's against Tau, maybe it's Astra Militarum, factions like that don't necessarily want to leave. They want to shoot from where they are. So that's why Cleanse is much more doable against those factions. And Storm Hostile, if you're not able to do it, then it probably means you're just scoring the primaries anyway, because they're not going to be there. But if they do take an objective, that's when you pile everything into that objective to take it back. Storm Hostile Objective. You can even cleanse that same objective that you've just stole, because you now own the objective. Maybe it's a unit of Canoptic Wraiths and you've got some Scarabs behind them. So the Wraiths can charge in. The Scarabs, there'll be a Technomancer of course with the Wraiths, as there always is. That Technomancer gives the Scarabs an extra bit of OC, so then those Scarabs can do the action. So whilst they're all fighting on the objective, gains you control and you're doing Storm Hostile and Cleanse at the same time. Of course you'll need to have another objective to max out on Cleanse, so that will be 2 VP per Cleanse, so that will be 4 in total, and then Storm Hostile is 4 as well. So you can get 8 VP if that's done correctly. I mean, other synergies, other ways of doing this, you could take a Catan shard of, I don't know, the Nightbringer, stick a Reanimator behind him, let the Nightbringer go into the objective, bully whatever's on there, Gaze of Death, and then use its Night Scythe melee weapon, absolutely murder whatever's on there, and get the lone Reanimator just to do the action. It's not doing much else, it's not going to charge, it's not going to shoot, so you may as well get the Reanimator doing the action there. But there's loads of other combinations where you can get 2 units into the same objective. One does the action, one does the fighting. But yeah, as I said, the reason I like this one is you don't need to touch the enemy deployment zone if you don't want to, and the likelihood is you've selected this pairing because you don't want to. Then we come on to option C. It's not a number, option letter C. This one, a little bit iffy with, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a little bit iffy with it, but it can work. It is recover assets and engage on all fronts. Now, recover assets is a risky play because it doesn't end until end of your opponent's turn or the end of the game. You've got to do actions in 2 out of 3 of the zones, maybe all 3 to get 6 VP. If you do it in 2 zones, you get 3 VP. Your deployment zone is 1, no man's land is 1, and your opponent's deployment zone is 1. So you need to be doing actions, so therefore you need at least 2 units to do the actions, possibly 3. Now, as they're going to be doing different zones, they're likely going to be in different parts of the battlefield, which will help engage on all fronts, where you need 3 or 4 units to be in the different quarters. What I would like to use in this situation would be lone operatives, such as Hexmark Destroyers again, Illuminazaras again. They're the 2 lone ops. I know Illuminazaras needs another unit within 3. You've also got the Canoptic Court's enhancement. Nope, it's a stratagem even. You've got the Canoptic Court stratagem where you can stick lone op on a Canoptic unit. It's not lone op, but it's effectively lone op. Normally you're using it on Doomstalkers, but you could stick it on a Canoptic Spider, Canoptic anything really. Whatever you're taking that's Canoptic, you can use it on. In fact, the Reanimators, they're really good for that. Reanimators, we've already mentioned them in the previous, in option B. They've got the Feel No Pain save, you stick lone op on them as well. They're going to be up and running. Now, the reason why you need them to be up and running and not getting targeted, because like I said, it's going to end in your opponent's end of their turn. So they've got an entire turn to stop your action from happening by simply deleting your unit. So they're going to start targeting. They're going to start targeting that unit that's doing the action, or units rather, and they're going to go for charge moves, they're going to go for shooting. If you've got lone op, they've got to be within 12 inches to shoot. And if you've screened them off really well, which is the second point I was about to make, they're not going to be able to make an easy charge. They're going to have to clear the screen first, most likely in the shooting phase, before they can even make a charge move. Once they're in, they've then got to delete the unit for that to all happen in their favour. But remember, in terms of engage on all fronts, virtually any unit can do it. Doesn't matter about the OC here, they've just got to be in a quarter. So Canoptic Scarab Swarms are just fine. OC doesn't matter at all. So you can go really cheap, a unit of Scarab, or 3 units of Scarabs even, and that could be 3 quarters. They're very hard to see. You hide them in terrain, or behind terrain. They're so flat. Getting line of sight on them guys is quite difficult. But I think the main trick here is being able to score recover assets. You don't have to score it every turn if you do max out in some of the turns. If you can max out in 3 turns and do it in 3 zones for 3 turns out the entire game, that's 18 points because it's 6 per turn there. And then the other 2 turns we can try and do it on a couple, or just leave it. 18 points on a single secondary is pretty good, so I'd be happy with that. You could just go for 3 points in all 5 turns. That's probably an easy method, but that will only get you 15 points, because 3 times 5 is obviously 15. 15 isn't bad either, so you maybe just want to go for that, but now you've got to consider engage. You need to be in quarters, so you may as well be doing it if you've got like a lone Hexmark Destroyer in the opposite side of the battlefield trying to do engage for you. It may as well recover assets while it's there. Now, the reason why you would select option C as opposed to option A and B is maybe your opponent's backlines are full to the brim and you've already looked at option B, cleanse and storm hostile objective, and you've said, you know what, I don't have the staying power on those objectives, I don't have the power to be able to stick around in the no man's land. Maybe you've not got your Canoptic Wraiths in this game, maybe you've gone for Locus Destroyers or units that don't want to be sort of stuck there getting caught out in melee. Maybe you've got some Immortals that aren't bad, toughness 5 with a 3+A, but they do go down. So the staying power isn't really there, and that's why you would then opt for recover assets and engage. So that's the 3 options that you can, well, 3 of many options in fact that you could choose from. As I said, I'm going to then be creating a list or 2 that will be able to deal with all 3 of these combinations. Up to me what I do. As soon as I see my opponent's list, I go, right, you're playing Orcs, I'm going to go behind enemy lines and establish Locust. Or I go, you're playing Tau, you've got a gun line, you're castling up, I'm not going to go anywhere near your back line, so I'm going to go for Cleanse or Storm Hostile Objective. The third option, I probably won't need it, to be honest with you, because it's going to be A or B. But C is a bit of a backup plan. Maybe you're going up against a horde. Maybe it's a Tyranid horde and there's hundreds of gaunts everywhere. The back line is flooded, the no man's land is flooded. What do you then do? You've got to take out all these little gaunts. It's going to take you a few turns minimum, 2 or 3 turns even. By the time you do get to take them out, if you do, you're already a little bit late to the party. You're now going to be scoring from turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. You might not max out, so you're going to be reducing the amount of VP you can actually get. So that will be where recover assets and engagement fronts may come in handy. So guys, look out for the video that's coming out. Don't know when it's going to be. I need to get onto designing the lists. But yeah, subscribe, hit the notification bell as well so you will get notified by email, I think it is. And yeah, thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.